I think that the number one mission for everybody who cares about the health of how well learning is happening in the family is to get parents to recognize what I said earlier, is that their primary responsibility, and I would argue more than anything else, their primary responsibility as a parent is to steward the health of the learning of their children as the primary sort, because it affects their physical health, the cognitive health, emotional health, linguistic development, academic success, how well they get along with others, as well as being the framework and the backdrop for the kind of turn-taking dialogue that it takes to bring a child's mind into the kind of language complexity necessary to be ready for reading. Now, one of the other things that parents are often confused about is this thing about reading to kids, right? Yeah, it's helpful to read to kids, but the most important thing to do is to get kids engaged in dialogue. It's more important than reading to them. Reading to them isn't about reading to them in the sense of bombarding them with stories, even though that can be helpful. It's about the reading to them has created a discipline which reminds parents to engage their children in language. But the book's kind of a prop. They could do just as well if they were telling them live stories, right? There's a part of it that's about modeling literacy practices, but the big part of it is getting the child to be more robust, quicker, more differentiated, more language enabled by the time they hit the wall with reading. And that's the core to where family literacy needs to go.
But at the same time, it's very difficult in our society to get time with parents to work on these concepts and the skills for those for whom this was not a part of their upbringing, not a part perhaps of their culture.
Absolutely, that's our challenge, in the sense that the fact that that's the difficult thing doesn't mean that isn't the right thing, right? First of all, and that on one hand you could say parents have this intuitive sense. A child walks through the front door and they're bleeding on the knee, right? The parent looks at the knee and says, "Well, gee, I don't need to take you to the hospital," or "I do." There's almost an intuitive sense of this external physical health. We need to get parents to recognize that they need to have that kind of sensitivity to the interior health of how learning's going on in their children. And I do believe we're going to be able to get that right to the point where a short experience that's profound and thumps people will help parents get that, so that it's not about carrying a bunch of knowledge around about how to practice. It's about shifting their orientation about how to be in relationship with their child. That's the key. And we can all learn to do that. I think the more that parents realize that, the more that radiates into every dimension of what they're doing with their children. That's what prompts them to want to engage more in conversation. That's what keeps their eye on what's going on with the child in school or in their relationships with others. Are they fostering this kind of healthy learning everywhere they can as they dance and interact with their children? That's the core of having families be better at supporting the healthy learning of children that's necessary for the children to succeed in school, regardless of the language. So I understand, like all these things, we're up against a mountain. But that doesn't mean that isn't where we need to focus our energy, because that's where it is. I mean, the reality is, like we've been talking about, this problem is massive. We are fundamentally, with our collective ignorance and negligence, disabling the learning on a mass scale of generation after generation of our children, and it's costing us this phenomenal amount. We're going to have to translate that into the value case and the argumentation and the focus it's going to take to change what you were just talking about, or what we were talking about earlier about classrooms. I understand it isn't going to be easy.